All right, so I just finished watching the documentary War by Other Means by John Pilger. Um, this documentary is a little bit dated. It was created in 1992, and basically it highlights the World Bank, the IMF, U.S. government, British government, um, basically agreeing with loans to third world countries who are unable to make the payments, pay the interest back. So basically, what they're doing is taking advantage of these third world countries, basically taking advantage of them and using their debt to take control of their resources and their land, kind of exploiting them. Um, so a little bit of history on the World Bank. It was formed in 1944. It was housed in Washington D.C. Basically, the president um, would be would go to the country with the highest wealth, which was the USA. Um, and it was created. The main focus was to develop third world countries, develop countries with lower income, countries that are poor. So that was their main focus, was to help develop those countries. Didn't really go that way at all. Now, the thing that's scary about world banks, is that every World Bank official is granted immunity to legal action anywhere in the world. So these officials are immune to any legal charges at all. They are literally immune to absolutely anything, which is pretty corrupt. Um, Anyways, so the documentary was based around the Philippines and the national debt that they're paying off. Now, take note, this documentary is from 1992, but all the ideas and facts are still present in today in 2018. 26 years later. Um, so a little. So in 1992, 44% of the national budget was given to interest charges. 44% of their national budget to pay off interest on these loans. And 3% of their national budget was used for healthcare. So put that into perspective. And the poverty there in 1992, 70% of the Philippines was in poverty. That's absolutely outstanding. Not outstanding, unbelievable. Um, you know, you have children who are homeless. Okay, so just think about that. Think about living in a first world country, and you're going downtown. You're going, on the streets, and you see a homeless child. That's not something that you see every day. So just think about that. You got children who are homeless, and these children resort to drugs, and they resort to prostitution so that they can earn some money. And the reason that these children are homeless is because their parents can no longer afford to take care of them, because 70% of the country is in poverty. It's terrible. Parents are abandoning their children. Um, so basically, the idea, what the World Bank does, um, is they say to these countries, you have to cut your government spending. You have to increase exports, and you have to privatize, or basically, we're not going to loan you any more money. And if they don't loan them any more money, then these countries will literally evaporate. So, countries like the Philippines really have no choice but to take terms of these loans. So, the case in the Philippines is, the Philippines has had rich farmland, great for crop growing, great, provided a lot of food for the country. But unfortunately, farming was not profitable for the World Banks and the IMF. So what they did is they took all of these farmlands and turned them into factories for export production, because the World Banks and the IMF can actually profit off such things. So Philippines, make matters even worse. Now they're losing their farmland, which is feeding millions of people. And that means even more people are going into poverty, even more people are starving, more homeless children. So it's a vicious cycle. And back to what I said earlier, World Banks claim that their main focus was to help developing countries. It's really, really not the case. Their main focus was to profit off of the poor. Right? Terrible. Very, very terrible. So, and it goes back to, not only are they ruining these farmlands, but they're tearing down forests, right, for resources and more production. Forests as big as Denmark were torn down in the Philippines. Forests, Philippines used to have some of the greatest ecosystems in the world. They no longer do. It said in the documentary, which, as I said before, was in 1992. It said in the documentary that by 2000, by the year 2000, there'll be no trees left in the Philippines. Now, I haven't looked into that in 2018. I'm sure there's some trees there, but in regards to forests, probably nothing left. So, this debt is destroying the people, and it's destroying the environment, and it's a vicious circle. It's awful. These World Banks are terrible. And it's not just happening in the Philippines, it's happening in developing countries all over the world, and it's happening in first world countries too. These World Banks are controlling nations with their policies. Almost every nation is in debt, or I would say every nation is in debt, because of these World Banks that are giving out loans that are in the billions of dollars, and the interest rates on these loans are killing people, just killing economies. It's a lot of corruption. And in terms of corporate responsibility, I don't think this is something that is sustainable. I don't think it's certainly not sustainable for the Philippines to continue living like that. If it's 2018 now, and this has been going on since the 80s and 90s, what is the Philippines going to look like in 10 years, 20 years? There's going to be virtually nothing left but factories and production plants from foreign investors. And there's, the poverty levels are going to be at 100%. Nobody's going to be able to live there because they're paying off these debts. That's it. The country's paying off the debts. That's not sustainable. That's not sustainable for the Philippines. That's not sustainable for any country, I don't think. So, how far is it going to go? How far is it going to go? It's not sustainable. And it's not right. The unfortunate thing is, people like you and I, there's not much that you can do about it other than expose it. get more people to know about it, maybe something can be done about it. But the problem is that these governments are involved with it too, right? So if you take these problems to the government's being told what to do by the World Bank. So it's a hard problem. The solution for these third world countries is to be replaced by agencies that are for nonprofit. Agencies that allow these countries to allocate the resources where they need them, not into tearing down farmland for factories and stuff like that. The terms of the loans would be to meet the Philippines' needs or the other third world countries' needs. So I think that's really the solution. But first off, you have to get rid of the World Bank, right? And you have to have agencies that are willing to be for nonprofit. And that's the toughest part of it all. But if you haven't watched the documentary, I highly suggest you do. It's called War by Other Means. And it'll give you an idea of the World Bank, what they're doing, what they've been doing since the 40s, things that are going on around you, the corporate fraud, the poverty that they're creating, children dying, people dying. Just go and do the research, people, and your eyes will be opened.